Hi everyone, Bren here. Welcome to this week's garden update, and I can already tell it's going to be a bit random, so just prepare yourself. Before I head outside, I'm going to grab this indoor plant and bring it out with me because it's looking pretty sad. I reckon it could do with a little bit of sunshine. Well, I'm saying sunshine, but what I really mean is semi-shade, because if I was to put this out into full sun after it being indoors, it would probably go into shock and it wouldn't really help this plant at all. But I reckon here underneath the apple tree, semi-shaded spot, I think, with a bit of fresh air flowing through and a bit of that lovely afternoon sun, I reckon this plant's going to really appreciate it. I had a quick check looking for the tag, but it's not there anymore, and I've got absolutely no idea what this one's called. The reason why I purchased it was because I loved this variegation on the foliage. I thought that was really unusual. It actually wasn't too expensive at all. I got it from my local garden centre. It cost me $40. And I am trying to build up a collection of indoor plants. Having said that, I have been known to not keep them alive for very long. So I'm hoping now if I take better care of this one, it will last a good few years. We'll see. The oranges on the tree, which I can see from our kitchen window, are starting to change colour. I'm so happy to see this tree thrive again because it didn't fruit at all last year due to a really big storm we had the year before. I'm probably getting my timeline a bit mixed up there, but pretty much we had a massive storm that ripped off all the maturing fruit, and we didn't receive any fruit that year, or I believe the year after. It's taken a while for this tree to recover, and it sure has. It's absolutely packed with delicious oranges. Last week I mentioned that I was going to go around with a bucket and cut some of these beautiful dahlias and other cut flowers. Didn't get to cut them all off or harvest them all. However, I did manage to pick enough to make this little garden posy, which is full of beautiful shades of pinks, blues and a few whites as well. Those blue spiky looking flowers which you see in that arrangement are actually not flowers, they're mostly just bracts belonging to this salvia called Anthony Parker, and I've got a few of these plants in the garden, and I'm telling you, every autumn time they put out such a beautiful display, and they're very long lasting in the vase as well, so I love adding these into autumn arrangements. In these two trays I have planted all of those Ranunculus Quorums which I purchased a few weeks back. So I ended up pre-sprouting these in water for about 3 hours, and then I placed them all into here. Just using this, which is a milk carton container, cut it up into pieces to divide the tray into two sections, and then I've shown you before, you know, I just use the milk carton labels, cut them up. They make really great tags for your plants. Didn't manage to get any more work done on this section, so maybe next week I'll have that trellis up of sweet peas and the netting up over the brassica beds. But for the moment everything is just in the exact same place that I left it when I showed you last week. I feel very fortunate to have this area where I know the chickens can't access any of these beds, so I don't need to cover them with any wire mesh. The mulch stays in place, and so do the plants. They stay intact. And you know something else I'm really happy about? There doesn't seem to be any slug or snail pressure on these, which, I don't know, I'm a little bit surprised about that because we have had a good bit of rain. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they just haven't found them yet. Autumn is such a great time of year to do some propagation of your perennials, and there's a few plants that I want to take some cuttings from today. This one is called Echium Pride of Mandaria. I think sometimes people can get a bit intimidated by propagation. I know I used to. I did that a bit slow. But you know what, it's actually pretty easy, and all you need to do is just pick off more than you think you'll need, so that if some of them don't strike or don't, you know, start to develop roots at the bottom, that's all right. At least you have some that do, and enough that you can either pot on, plant out in your garden, or give away to friends. I've also got a big patch of lavender which I want to take a few cuttings from. Finally, I'm going to grab a few sprigs of rosemary. I'm going to try and propagate all of these in water, but what I need to do first is just remove the foliage from the end part of the lavender and the rosemary. And of course, you can save all of these rosemary leaves. You can either make, like, say, a rosemary butter. You can put them into oil, into ice cube trays, and pop them in the freezer. And then with the lavender, you can actually use these lavender leaves. You can create some kind of infusion. You could put it into, say, if you're making truffles, you could try and make a lavender truffle and infuse it in cream. Lots of different things you can do with it. I'm going to place these on a sunny windowsill, and hopefully in a week or two, maybe that's a bit ambitious, but hopefully I'll start to see some roots come out. And I will also change the water that I've got in here maybe every 2 to 3 days. You know, something I didn't do was check behind the backs of all the foliage, particularly the Prydomonderia, because sometimes you can find little insects in here, and I don't really want any wandering around the house. A few weeks back, in the cupboard where I store my potatoes, sweet potatoes and onions, I noticed that this sweet potato, as well as these Kifler potatoes, were starting to sprout. And you know what, I was like, how fun would it be if I could see if I could grow these from store-bought produce? So I let the eyes continue to grow, and now each of these potatoes have multiple shoots coming out of them. I was thinking I might pop these into a large bag and see how they grow. Now, I am aware that potatoes and sweet potatoes, the foliage is very frost tender, so I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll put it in a shaded or a location away from any frost. I may even like set up the greenhouse and put them in there now over winter. But if I can get a little bit of a head start on growing these, could possibly mean that I might have potatoes earlier in the season come springtime than I usually would. It's a bit of an experiment. Don't really know what I'm doing, but that's pretty typical for me. But we'll see. Has anyone tried this before? Have you had success? Well, that is about it for this week, everyone. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end. And if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate your support. Until next Friday, everybody, I hope you have a great week ahead and happy gardening.